My name is Noor,
And I'm Allan.
and in this video we will be sharing some reflections on our experience preparing and implementing a coding plus mathematics activity in collaboration with school teachers for grade 9 mathematics students using the programming software called Scratch. So learning objectives that Allan and I decided to include within our project includes the C2.3, which comes from the grade 9 mathematics curriculum, which essentially states reading the code to predict its outcome and alter code to adjust constraints, parameters, and outcomes to represent a similar or new mathematical situation. We also decided to include extension questions for our activity as well, which goes by C2.2 for the learning objectives, which is creating a code which decomposes situations into computational steps in order to represent mathematical concepts and relationships to solve problems.
A short summary of our project. Using code, the students are tasked with filling out a chart, as we'll see to the right-hand side of the slide. The lesson is intended to explore the concept of interior angles, and students will explore how the sums of interior angles vary depending on the sides of the regular polygon and how many there are, and using the code that is provided and then editing that in order to see how the output of the code changes. Here's a couple links that the teachers could use, the first being the student guideline document, the one that the students will physically have when they're filling out all the work they need, including the charts, the starting code, which we saw in the previous slide, and the complete solution document that the teachers will have access to while they're walking around and helping in the classroom. The key moments and takeaways, we found that helping students is more than just looking for raised hands, and sometimes students will not ask for help when they're struggling. It is important as a teacher to recognize when students are having trouble, even when they don't explicitly ask for help. Now, we observed how the associate teacher helped students as they knew their students much better than we did as we've just met them in that day. And their experience teaching has allowed them to detect with greater efficiency when students were struggling internally. We benefited by learning strategies that the associate teachers used in the classroom, and we were able to apply this to our classes that we have had later in the day.
Recommendations for implementing this activity, we came up with 3. The first being always be attentive to those who are struggling, even if they do not raise their hand. There were many times within our lesson whereby both Allan and I were walking around the classroom and we noticed that students were progressing a little slower than others. So we wanted to make sure that they were on track, thus we allowed them to ask, or we also asked them if they had any questions or needed any further clarification or guidance. The second one would be if students are struggling, encourage them to experiment and test out values. A good example that we reflected upon was when many students asked us if this turn angle was correct or if the interior angle should be this. And instead of saying yes or no or perhaps, we actually encouraged them to test out the values in their Scratch program to be able to find out if that's the correct answer or not. The third one is being adaptive. So whether that be through student variance, knowing that every student has a little more experience or might be more of a beginner or intermediate level student when it comes to programming or coding, was very important to keep in mind. The next one would be technology and the available resources as well. So within our classroom, we only had access to one computer cart. So sometimes if it's a bigger classroom, students might need to share to complete the activity. The final one being lesson timing. So this activity can be stretched out over 2 to 3 days if the students require it, or it could even be completed within one full class. So being attentive to time is very important.
Our final thoughts, we are very grateful that we could participate in this project as collaboration has helped significantly improve our leadership and teaching skills, while allowing us to understand the importance of creating a well-developed lesson and activity for students. Working with teachers has helped us gain insight about how we can organize our own future classrooms as future teachers ourselves, and the importance of making those connections with students.
Thank you very much for your time, and we hope that you were able to learn a lot from our presentation.